Hey, welcome to Cooking Fresh, and we're about recipes that have 5 ingredients or less. Usually it takes like a half an hour to 20 minutes most in your cooking time. We really want to simplify recipes for you, but it's fall, which is a great time of year. We're here in the pumpkin patch. I'm actually growing some wonderful, they're fairy tale pumpkins. They have ridges on them in the squash patch. They're part of the squash family, obviously, and we're going to be doing 3 recipes that you can use for the fall that involve squash. There's 3 basic type of squash you're going to be using that you can see in the supermarket all the time. You get them all year round, but now the time of holiday season and fall season comes, also into winter, is really an important time to use up squash. They basically are a fruit because they have seeds on the inside, but they'll keep their sturdiness like a potato, and they have some starchiness to them as well. There's 3 different types. We have butternut squash, we have spaghetti squash, and we have acorn squash. 3 different types. They all can be roasted, boiled, baked, you name it. We're going to do 3 different styles. We're going to roast all of these, but we're going to change them up a little bit as to how we're going to prepare the 3 different ones. And these 3 recipes are great because you'll be able to use them for the holiday season, the fall, even into the winter. All right, so let's get in the kitchen and let's cook up these 3 squash. Hey, all right, so first we have our spaghetti squash. And basically you got to be really careful because it's going to roll around. So you got to set your knife in there. Really get your knife in, and you got to go down. You got to use all that muscle and strength that you have and cut it down. And then we turn it, and then we cut our tip in there again. Once you have your tip in, that gives you some stability. And cut all there, and then we separate it. Pretty simple. All you have to do with spaghetti squash is basically cut it in half, and it goes right on the sheet tray. And that's it, because we're going to get ready to roast that. So that's our spaghetti squash. Next, we have our acorn squash. So the acorn squash is pretty simple too, but it's really hard on the outside. So you have to really be careful it doesn't roll. You got to set your knife in and see how hard that is. So you have to set yourself up, pull it out, and set yourself up again, and be very careful to get your leverage to get through there. Find where your line is. When you come to the stem part, it gets a little tricky to cut through the middle. You can actually bang it down, okay? And that's going to be into our halves. Then we're going to go into halves again. We're actually going to go into thirds. So we go in again. There's once, turn it around, and 2. You need a sharp knife, so that's split up. And one more time. Now you can cut these even smaller wedges, but that's going to be fine with the thirds right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scoop out some of our seeds. We have our seeds here. You're going to scoop those out. Now sometimes when you do squash, you can take the seeds out afterwards. Sometimes people will roast a whole pumpkin and they'll do the seeds afterwards. Of course, you can roast these seeds for a snack the same way you would do pumpkin seeds. But we're going to get them out ahead of time here because you're going to see what's going to happen. We're going to put some a little bit of butter and maple syrup on them afterwards, after they've been roasting a bit. So there's all our seeds out. And we're going to, after we get our seeds out, we're going to set this onto a sheet tray the same way that we did with our spaghetti squash. So you see there, spread them right on the sheet tray. Put them with the cut side up for the roasting. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the butternut squash. Butternut squash, you don't have to take the skin off of it. But in this particular recipe, we're gonna dice it up. So what we're gonna do is we've already washed it. We're gonna take a peeler, and you have to peel all along here to get it peeled. It takes a little diligence, depending on the size of the butternut squash. These are pretty big, so all around you're gonna be peeling it, all the whole side, the whole circumference. All right. So we've got all our butternut squash peeled, and what we're gonna do is cut one end off. And you have like a round section here. That's where the seeds are. We're going to go 3/4 of the way into the butternut squash. That's your solid area that doesn't have any seeds, and the round part had seeds on it. This solid area we're going to cut down like that. And then we're going to cut down into planks. Tap your knife if it sticks. And again, so you got to be really careful cutting down. It's always easier to have your hand on top. That gives you more stability when you're going through it. Okay? See how I'm tapping that? And this is going to give us some nice square cuts after we've cut these planks. Then we cut those into strips, and strips, and strips again. And then we turn them that way, and we're going to cut them. There you go. and again. So this gives us some nice 3/4 inch cubes for roasting. Now the hard part is when we get to this base part, we have to cut this in half, and what you have to do is you have to scoop out your seeds. And you scoop your seeds out. Now you can roast the whole thing, like I said, without cutting it, but this gives it another nice texture when you want to do a nice dice of a squash. And you get more yield if you peel it first and then cut it, as opposed to just roasting it and then scooping it out. So you have that half right there. You're going to go down and keep going down again, and you get your pieces like that, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to cut again, and you're going to get your dices out of that. We can turn it when you get like a half moon shape like that, and you're going to get our dices. And then again, all around. It depends on the size of the butternut squash. This is a pretty big one. This is probably about a 1.5 to 2 pound size butternut squash. Hey, all right. So, like I said, we're doing 3 different recipes kind of in one video for you. This is our butternut squash that's been diced up. We're going to sprinkle some oil on there, and then we have a couple pinches of nutmeg. Nutmeg's really strong, so you want to sprinkle that, but you don't want to go crazy on the nutmeg. Sprinkle our nutmeg around there. Then we have our curry powder. Curry powder you're going to sprinkle around. We're going to mix all this in the pan. I have a roasting pan right now. You could also do this on a cookie tray or a sheet tray as well. There's our curry. And then also we're going to do salt and pepper. You get your salt and you have your pepper. And if you want to season a little bit later on after it's roasted, you can. But basically we want to get things started to get it roasting by tossing that oil, curry powder, salt, pepper, and nutmeg all together in our pan. So we got that all covered up with our oil and our spices. Okay, so we're getting ready to go in our oven. Hey, we're going to be putting in our butternut squash, also our spaghetti squash, and our butternut squash. All those are going in there. And like I said, our oven is about 350. You can go as high as 360. And how do we know it's done? Basically, like your yams, one of our other recipes, it's going to be about fork tender. So you're going to be able to put a knife in there pretty easily. And if you're still not sure, always take one out and taste it and see if it's soft enough. And if it's not soft enough, then basically you're going to put it back in the oven. And this has that curry powder on it, and of course the ginger and the oil, salt and pepper. So that's our nice side dish of our butternut squash. Hey, our acorn squash. We left the skin on our acorn squash. You could peel it off ahead of time, but it's a lot easier. Just cut it and kind of gives it a nice half moon shape. What we have is we melted butter. Your amounts in the recipe there. We have our melted butter. To that we're going to add our maple syrup to our melted butter. There's our maple syrup. Then we're going to have in our 1/8 of a teaspoon of our powdered ginger. That's going to get mixed up. So we have the maple syrup, powdered ginger, and melted butter. So that's all mixed together. Then this gets poured over the top. Now, if you want to put it back in the oven, you can, but it's been roasted already. And if this sits room temperature for a couple minutes, it's going to be fine to have the glaze on there. You don't really need to bake it again. It's all set. Here we go. Hey, all right, spaghetti squash. Once again, like the other squash, you're going to feel it's going to give you a little resistance, but it's going to be fork tender, about the same amount of roasting time, about that 45 minutes. What we want to do is we're going to take out our initial seeds out of there, and those come out pretty easily. It helps to let it cool for about 10 to 15 minutes before you start scooping out and get your fibers out of there. So let it cool for about 10 or 15 minutes after you've taken it out of the oven. You can use a spoon to start breaking it up, but also you can use a fork. So a fork helps to break it into little kind of strands, spaghetti strands. So you see we're scooping that out. And either side starts breaking apart. It kind of goes in layers. As you can see, it's starting to break out. Now you don't want to overcook it, because you overcook it, then it won't break into the strands. And then you got to carefully put that into a bowl for mixing. Hot. And also, if the fork doesn't work, you can also use a spoon. And make sure you go both sides too as well. They both work. Fork and spoon works together. Now we're going to add Parmesan cheese and a little bit of garlic to this. You can do sweet or savory when you do a spaghetti squash. It's up to you. See how I get the edges, one side and the other, to scoop it all around. You'll get almost down to the skin on it, so it breaks apart pretty easily. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Next, we have a little bit of salt and pepper, and our Parmesan cheese. We also have some garlic, pre-chopped garlic. You can chop your own if you want. That's our pre-chopped garlic. Now gently, you're going to kind of toss that around. Kind of fold. You're going to go up and over, up and over, up and over. If you wanted to add some chopped parsley to this, you can. And some people just love a lot of Parmesan cheese. Some's never enough. Make sure your seeds are out. Got one seed right there. You don't want anybody biting into the seeds. And that goes into a platter or a bowl. Or you can also have this as a side of a meat item or a veg item. You can put other sauces on top of it. You can put tomato sauce on top of it. But with the garlic and the Parmesan cheese, all it's missing is a little bit of green. For some chopped, chopped pepper. Chopped parsley you could put in there, or some chopped chives.